Stuck living with the pain? Visit relieffactor.com.
Here's Johnny. Thank you. Hello there. Social media family. Being of any person among yourselves, from my followers, as in aka subscribers, to visitors even so who are supposedly affiliated or associated with and are representing my own particular personal YouTube social media channel, and likewise chat room and comment section.
President Trump is very good at the close. He's not going to get taken. He's
Well,
from a lot of tables.
At least technically the latter, if not as much as officially as a former. Yes. How are you all doing? And for that, how are any of your loved ones being from family members to friends, likewise, who are affiliated, associated with, and representing your many different immediate personal households? Hopefully, all is well that ends well, with one and many, or with more than quite a few, and moving right along. And whereas I have a spanking new baby social media broadcast, that is, video content material for you all, what do you think I admit? I have yet to get married and then, from there produce an underage minor of a child with a significant other of a spouse, or preferably a born and raised female person representing the opposite sex of a grown adult woman, being of whatever race, but then not necessarily being of whatever walk of life, faction of society, or lifestyle preference. And seeing how I'm not gay. But rather, what I meant to say, as a backtrack here, would be no purpose in being, or so I can go on with the following to continue from when my person last left off, so I can finish up as a complete a form of previous prior line thought in that same or in some so sense to a word. Yeah, speaking the proper standard. There's the proper, correct, standard English as we have it for our own adopted native tongue, so far as the American dialect is concerned, with all its grammatical uses, quality and quantity, and with a rather extensive, versatile, expressive, and or impressive vocabulary or not. Yes, I have that being as is a spanking new social media broadcast of video content material. And whereas I would hope that you all would give me your input as in feedback as I speak upon some such matters, from that being of my own perspective and a narrative. And as it is, about involving, concerning, regarding, and making some sort of reference to how this one mental retard, and no offense or disrespect is meant to be directed at any of the much more familiar mentally challenged, for that last mention when I said that, and I stay for the record. That's how this one mental retard had decided one day that he wants to unalive a maternal, did I say maternal? What I meant to say, correction, please continue to my mind compared to Prince of Darkness, just conclusion speech. But whereas one day this mental retard had decided that he had himself had wanted to unalive, that's the amount of replacement or substitute for the word murder or kill, as it was popularized, that particular word to become a corn phrase when it was first used by a YouTube, or rather TikTok social media influencer by the name of a one Mr. Ray William Johnson. Anyway, though, where's this one male mental retard had decided that he had wanted to unalive his elderly relative, senior citizen, being a paternal head of his own immediate personal family household, is what I meant to say. A patriarch all the same. And by either having jugged him with a stick and jig or a sharp object or whatever kind sort of type, or having popped him with a poo-poo, being of a loaded lethal weapon of a firearm, 6-shooter, revolver, pistol, gun, well, whatever. I haven't said, whatever. Well, whatever the case is, she says, I don't remember correctly. One thing I do know, though, is that he had unalived this same, in other words, so I should be much more specific and detailed. He had unalived his own grandpa, And the sad part of it is that he didn't have any prior beef with him. I mean, imagine that. 1 minute or moment, he's having a jovial conversation, a dialogue with him. They're joking and laughing about some kind sort of type of a, televised sitcom production or comedy television show or program. I'm sorry about that. I apologize for the interruption. Just another one of these dickhead prick neighbors from damn hell who assume that to harass, intimidate, and persecute or to attempt to terrorize and traumatize another neighbor. Yes, who assume that to attempt to terrorize, torture, and traumatize, or who assume that to attempt to bully another neighbor is strength or power when it is just so much weakness. For the interruption of noises you heard in the background, and how certain neighbors need to schedule for themselves. They need to seriously schedule for themselves future given appointment date with a shrink, if not an exorcist as well. Then stupid does and stupid feels. Like as if I have to mention any one of the likes of these present public nuisance problem neighbors, aka proverbial neighbor from down hell in this really bad neighborhood I'm in as a present moment in time, until I can get back to much more familiar territory, if you know what I mean. Read between lines, fill in the blanks, Only after I save up money, not only for moving expenses, but then likewise to pay the first month's rent to a future new landlord in one of the better neighborhoods. Whereas from there, I could breathe more of a sigh of relief compared to where I'm at now, having to be much more, not just more, but much more alert to any proverbial neighbors from damn hell coming off like from the Midnight Cowboy, worse yet, spooks to sit by the door. And so much for that conversation, a dialogue. Not that I was meaning to wag the dog as we change the subject. And once again, I apologize for the rude, noisy interruption. Coming from the same or the said in question and aforementioned, but getting to what I was trying to say before I was so rudely interrupted. As I continue from where and when my person had last left off, so I can finish up as a complete a former line of thought. And whereas, at one given moment in time, this grandson is having a jovial, good old time with this grandpa of his. Joking and laughing with him over televised TV show comedy production for a franchise sitcom series. And then the next moment or minute from there, he's like either jugging or jabbing, stabbing him with a stick majig or a sharp object sharp metal object or whatever kind sort of type, or he's popping him with poo-poo, a 6-shooter with a loaded lethal weapon of a firearm being of a revolver, a loaded revolver, pistol, or gun. And where the sad part of it, whereas previously, or prior to them, that's what I've been saying, he himself had not any prior, or previous, or he himself had not any beef in times past before then with his grandpa to, misbehave like that. Be it where it had been gone about in the spur of the moment or a premeditated plan. If it was gone about in the spur of the moment, then he may get some such leniency from a judge, jury, and prosecutor. He has defense counsel, attorneys, or lawyers or not to speak in his greater behalf or to take on his legal case to defend him.
The whole thing is simple. And to see the way in which we're being
lectured
to by who couldn't pay
if it was a premeditated plan, then the charges against him would be upgraded, and he would be looking at something other than possible and potential manslaughter, as in first-degree murder. You got a clue. And people in damn hell want ice water. And don't tell me how much time you can get for either charge, because I wouldn't know. Simply being that because I don't try to make a habit out of making the can or the crazy house like a revolving door. The can, JAIL, or the crazy house, a unit in the psych ward, like so, you know what I'm saying? Well, one charge I do know that you can get pretty much a lengthy sentence in the can for, or in the crazy house for that matter, is that for the charge of the civil and a human rights violation offense of sexual assault or rape. I think, if I'm not mistaken, like similar to the sentence you could get for robbing a bank with or without any accomplishing crime. I think that's supposed to be something like, what is the minimum is 5 years in a can, or the crazy house for that matter, and the maximum is supposed to be something like, that's a ghetto pageant for now on. At least from a decade to a decade and a half. That's either 10 to 15 years, maybe 20 for that matter. I can't remember. Those people, when they read that stuff, have to say to themselves, they have to cringe on the inside. And moving right along. Then getting back to the original subject matter topic discussion to be debated, I would give an argument with the many different views and opinions to be affiliated, associated with, and representing some or such thereof. So this grandson decides to off his grandpa, Stupid and sick MF. I mean, really now. Just certain persons should not be permitted to babysit any underage minors or children. Then, not to mention, certain moms should not have any kids to begin with. I'm not saying whereas I would be condoning abortions, but if certain parents, and not to be sound contradicting myself, but if certain parents don't know how to raise children disregard what you heard in the background. Once again, as I was saying, the idiots and sickles of certain neighbors. Anyway, getting back to what I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted. You know, I was saying that certain parents, or certain parents, as in moms and mothers, shouldn't have children if they don't want to take on the responsibility of raising them. Otherwise, they should have their tubes tied. Seriously, though, especially if they end up misusing and abusing them. And so, the same or similar can be said, stated for the record. When it comes to those who could possibly supposedly be trying to think to spend quality time with the elderly or some such relatives of theirs, senior citizens, because with their pea brains the size of extinct dinosaurs, no telling what could happen to, any left in their charge, And it starts with, if you're going to continue to spend everybody's especially if the person who the elderly or senior citizens, as well as children, are left in the company of, are just so irresponsible and be the likes of other relatives who are really just grown in the mere physical sense of the word, but haven't aged mentally, if you know what I mean. Read between lines, fill in the blanks. And so this grandson had done a number on his grandpa. Just ignore what you hear in the background. Stupid does and stupid feels. Certain neighbors being as they are. Anyway, to continue from where and when I last left off, and misery loves company. Getting back to something such as that was wagging dog hasn't changed the subject. Then I'll be glad to get up this neighborhood. That is hopefully soon enough. Finally, but getting back to what I was trying to say before I was so rudely. Then possibly, as I would have in mind to conclude some such matters. So this grandson, unalived his grandpa, and now, whereas he himself is facing some such rather severe or serious charges of civil and human rights violation offenses, and not to mention he himself will be up for a psych evaluation. As the cookie crumbles, then no use crying on spilled milk. It'd be something if he would be like all of a sudden in the canner in the crazy house and a brain cell grows in his head. A little bit too late for that. You're supposed to have become subject to experiencing that if you were to go behind bars. Y'all know what I mean? Anyway, on this last note of interest, I would like to say, if you have not gotten Christ as your personal Lord, I will hope that you would think to do so now, while the blood is still running warm in vein, by recognizing what he himself had done upon the cross of Calvary to fulfill the biblical prophet, to restore the breach between himself and mankind, to make you be eligible for the. You don't have to go to